Hey guys, Hussein and welcome to YouTube channel. So in this video, I'm going to be making you the Socket.io monsters. So now let's talk about what in the world is this technology which we are currently learning and why you should care about that. So Socket.io is a JavaScript library that enables real-time bidirectional communication between the client and the server. So what is a bidirectional communication means? Something which we are going to be discussing in a few seconds, but I want you to just bear with me for a few seconds. So it simplifies the process of building interactive web application by allowing data to be transmitted instantly and continuously between the client and the server, facilitating features like chat application, live updates, and multiplayer games, and also the trading applications is something which we are going to be discussing briefly. So that's just the actual definition of what a Socket.io is. But now let's talk about what in the world is a bidirectional communication means. So bidirectional communication means that the information can flow in two directions. Both the web client, like a browser, and the server can send and receive data to and from each other in a real time. So if something changes on the server, it can immediately notify the client and vice versa, without the client needing to constantly ask the server if there's new information available or not. So I know that sounds a bit awful and confusing, but you know what, let me just break this down for you. So here is the analogy. So I want you to think about the bidirectional communication is like a phone call. So when you're talking on the phone with someone, you can both speak and listen at the same time. It's not just a person talking while the other person listens. Both parties can exchange information back and forth. Similarly, with bidirectional communication in Socket.io, both the web client and the server can send and receive data, so creating a two-way flow of information like a conversation on the phone. So that was just an intro to what our Socket.io is, but now let's just make a setup for our coding journey. So now let's talk about the prerequisites for this course. So I want you to just search my name on YouTube, so it's gonna just bring you to my channel, and you can like check out my other courses if you wanted to. And here you can see I want you to just click on this link right here, or you can either go to this playlist, or you can also go to this playlist right here, which is a full stack JavaScript complete course. So in my case, I'm going to just open this one, and if I open that, it's going to just brings us to this full stack web development masterclass. So you can check out the rest of the courses, but what you have to know to take this course is a bit of React.js knowledge, and we are going to be using there for the final project. I shouldn't have to call it a project, but we will build a chat application using React.js. So you will have to know a bit of React.js, and also you have to know the node.js, and you have to know the Express.js. So that's the 3 courses, or maybe 4 courses. Like you also have to know a bit of HTML and CSS. I mean, like we are not going to be working with HTML and CSS that much, but we will use that. And you also have to know a bit of JavaScript, and also node.js and Express.js. So yeah, that's all the thing that you have to know to take this course. Before I make a setup for this course, first of all, I want you to come to this link, which is a socket.io, and if you just right there, it's going to bring you to this official page of a Socket.io, and you can learn more about that, the companies they are using, the contribution. Here you can see they are calling themselves as Socket.io is a bidirectional and low latency communication for every platform. You can go to the documentation, but in my case, I'm going to just click on this getting started button right here, so you can learn more about that, like how to initialize the project, how to serve a HTML file, integration with Socket.io, emitting events, and something which we are going to be also learning throughout this course. But yeah, that was just a quick intro to what a Socket.io is. So now let me just create a folder right here, and I'm gonna just give it the name of like my Socket dash course. Okay, and now I'm gonna just open that in my VS Code. So now let me just open that in my VS Code right here. So it's going to open it right here on the other screen, and now let me just make that a bit bigger. Now what I want to do is that I want to just create a setup right here. So I'm going to be using Express.js, and yeah, we are going to be just working with the plain HTML file and also the CSS. So now let me just open my terminal right here. So the first thing which I want to do is that I want to initialize my project by using the npm init-y, and now let me just hit enter right here. So it's going to just initialize my node package manager file right here. Now let me just close that, and I'm going to be installing a few packages right now. So the first package in this course which we will need is the Express.js. So I'm going to just write npm i to install the Express.js, and also the nodemon, and also the socket.io. So now let me just hit enter. So it's going to install all of them right here. So while it's doing that, I'm going to just create a file right here. I'm going to just give it the name of like index.js, and now let me just close that, and I'm going to also create a file. You don't have to create this file, but I'm doing that because I'm going to be sharing or pushing my code into my GitHub. So I'm going to just write my node modules right here, save my file, and here you can see everything is now successfully installed. Now let me just close that, And yeah, we are now totally set up. But yeah, we are totally set up. Now let me just go ahead and go to my package file right here and open that. And I'm gonna also create a script for myself. So now let me just create a start script, and I'm going to just remove that, and I'm gonna just write like node index.js, and I'm going to also write my type of module as well, so that we can use the import and export. So now let me just go ahead and go to my index file. I'm going to be just using console.log of hello Hosan. Okay, and now let me just run this. So I'm going to be using npm run npm start with do. So now let me just use that, and here you can see we are now getting hello Hosan right here, which is looking supremely amazing. So now let me just save that. So now what I want to do is that I want to take care of these steps right here. So the first thing we would do is that we would grab a few packages which we would need for this project. Then we would create instances of that. Then we will also serve our HTML file, and we are going to be taking care of this fourth one a bit later. But finally we have to just listen for our server. So now let me just import my packages first of all. So I'm going to be importing my express.js from the express.js, and I'm going to be also getting the http from the http, and we are going to be also grabbing the file URL to path, and we would need that to serve our HTML file. So we are going to be using like node URL, and we would also need or something called the directory name function, and also the join function name as well, from where from the node and also from the path module. And finally we just have to import the server from the socket.io. So now let me just save that, and we are now totally done with importing the packages. Now let me just create instances of that. So I'm going to first of all go ahead and just write my app, and let me just create an instance of express.js, and also let's create a server. So I'm going to be creating my server by using the http module, and inside this module we already have the create server method right here, and inside there we are going to be passing our express application. And now let's just pass that to our new server which we are grabbing from the socket.io. Okay, so here you can see we are now grabbing this server from the socket.io, and now we have to copy this server, and now we have to just pass that right here inside there. Okay, so now we are totally done with the instances, and now let's just serve our HTML file. So what I want to do is that I want to create my index.html file right here, and inside there we will just use our doc type HTML, and I'm going to just give it the name of like socket.io demo or something like that. And I'm going to be also creating my h1 right here, and I'm going to just say like socket.io, and now underneath that, we're going to take care of the rest of them in a few seconds, but now let me just save that. And now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to serve our HTML file which we just created right here. Okay, so now let's just do that. And to do that, first of all, we're going to have to get the directory name. So we would just use like dir name. We cannot do that because we are using the module, so we just have to use our dir name which we are already importing right here. Let me just show you that. We are already importing this directory name function from the node and then a specific path module. So now we are successfully grabbing there, but now inside there we just have to pass our file URL, come on, this method right here, or not method but function, and inside there we just have to write our import.meta.url. okay, so now let me just write my import right here inside there, and now underneath that we are going to be just creating our route which will be the get method. And if you go to the home, we are going to be passing our callback function like request and response inside there, and we are going to be just using our method which will be response.sendFile. And then we have to just join our directory name, and also we have to just join our index.html file. Okay, so I'm going to just comment this line of code right now, and I'm going to just log to the console my dir name right here. So now if I save this file, and now let me just go ahead, and here you can see it's going to give us, let me just restart my server once again. And here you can see it's going to just give us my entire path right here. So in this case, I'm currently inside a C users Hosan, then the desktop. Inside this desktop I have this folder which is my socket course. Okay, so if I also want to attach my index file which you have right here, okay, so if I also want to attach that, I'm going to be just using like comma, and now let me just pass my index.html file. So now let me just save that, and here you can see we are also adding this index.html file with that. Okay, so now let me just cut that from here, and now let me just uncomment this line of code out, save my file, and now let's just check this out. So I'm going to just save this file, and finally we have to just create a server so that we can listen to the server. So now let me just create my port. First of all, you can just do this separately in the .env file, but I want to just make things totally simple, so I'm going to just write it right here. So we are going to be just listening to this 3000 port, and we are going to be just writing our server.listen. And now let me just pass my port first of all, and then we have to just write my console.log which will just say like server running on port, and now let me just pass my port right here. So now let me just save that, and here you can see it is already running. But now let me just hit this port. So what I want to do is that I want to just write my local host of 3000, and now if I hit enter, so it's gonna just give us this socket.io right here. And why is that? That's because inside this index.html file we wrote this socket.io inside this h1 right here. But if I also want to write something else like paragraph of lorem or something like that, let me just save that and refresh that, and here you can see it's gonna also gives us that text right here. So yeah, that's cool. But now let me just cut that from here, we don't need that. So yeah, this is how we are going to be serving our HTML file. But now let's just take care of defining a connection event handler. So now let's talk about the essential part of this course, which is called the io.on connection and then the callback function. So what do I mean by that, and what are we on doing here? The io.on is a method used to register the event listener for different events that occur on the server side. So the io object represents the main socket.io server instance. So now let me just get into that in a bit detail. So what are we doing? When we call this method, we are telling the socket.io to listen for a connection event which occurs whenever a new client establishes a connection with the server, and the callback function will be called whenever this event occurs, and it will receive the socket object representing the connection to the client. Similarly, when we call the socket.on on the socket object to listen for the events specific to that individual client connection. Okay, so this is what we are doing behind the scene. But now let's talk about the syntax, like how we are going to be doing that. This is how we are going to be doing that. First of all, we are going to be referencing to our socket server, which is the io, and then we have a method on there which is called the on, and we are going to be providing some sort of event to there. In this case, we are passing the connection event, and when somebody connects to there, we are going to be passing this callback function, and this callback function will take the socket as a parameter. You can give it any name you like, but in my case I just give it the name of like socket. And yeah, you can also give it the name of like a client because the user will be coming from the client, and then inside there you can do all of your magic. So you know what, let me just write some code, then you will get to know what I'm talking about. So now let me just fill this area which is define a connection event handler. So how in the world we are going to be doing that? The first thing which you have to do is that we just have to write our io. And what is io? Let me just show you that. The io is the new server, and it is coming from the socket io. So we are now referencing to the socket io server in this case, and inside this io server or the socket io server we have a method. Now let me just write a dot, and here you can see we have numerous of method and properties and a lot of stuff right here, but the one we are interested in is a on. Okay, so here you can see if I just write a on, so it's gonna just gives us that method at the top. And now let me just execute there, and now inside there it requires the event listener. So in this case I'm going to be passing the event name of like connection in this case. And then the next thing which you have to do is that we just have to pass our callback function right here. So you can pass your callback function like this. You know, let me just write my func, and you can pass your callback function like this. But in my case I'm going to be using the ES6, so I'm going to be passing my arrow function right here. And you can pass the socket parameter right now, but I'm not going to. Now let me just write my socket.io right here, I mean like my arrow function right here. Or you know what, let me just pass my socket right here because I want to show you something. And now inside there what I want to do, I just want to write my console.log of user user connected to server. And now let me just pass my check mark right here, and now let me just save that. And I want to restart my server, so I'm going to be using the npm start in this case. And now if I hit enter right here, so it's going to only gives us that server running on port of 3000 and nothing is happening right now. But if I go ahead and go to just my local host of 3000, still nothing will happen on the client and also on the server. Here you can see nothing is happening. But now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to attach our socket server to also our HTML file. So now let me just go ahead and provide a connection for our socket server. And how in the world we are going to be doing that? We are going to be just writing our script tag in this case, and for the script tag we are going to be passing the src, and for the source we are going to be passing our socket.io, then slash socket.io.js right here. So now if I just do that, and now let me just save this file. But yeah, let me just save this file, and now let me just copy that from here. I wanted to show you something, and now let me just place that right here. Okay, so we are going to be first of all writing our local host of 3000, and now let me just pass my my slash socket.io and then socket.io. node.js, and now let me just hit enter right here, and here you can see we have our entire socket server, and we have all of the method and the properties and every single thing, or you can say all of the JavaScript of our socket IO, or you can also say our entire socket IO library right here. Now let me just go back from here, and here let me just open my terminal. Still nothing is happening right here. But now the next thing which you have to do is that we just have to create an instance of our socket on the front end. This is the server, this is the front end or the client, whatever you want to call that. Now let me just write my src, not src but script, and I'm going to be just passing my type of module in this case. And now let me just create an instance of our socket. So now let me just write a socket, and I'm going to be just executing this IO, and as soon as I save this file, let me just go ahead and refresh that. And once I refresh that, let me just open my terminal. So what are we getting? We are now getting that user connected to the server totally amazingly. Okay, so yeah, we are now successfully connected to the server. And how we are doing that? We are doing that because first of all, we are providing this event, which is a connection. Then we are also passing this callback function, and we are now just writing this connection. We are just writing this callback function right here. But I want to show you something else. So you know what, let me just write my console.log of socket in this case. And if I just write a socket, now let me just save this file. Let me just go ahead and refresh there. And now let me just open my terminal. So what are we getting? We are getting a lot of properties and a lot of methods right here. So inside there, you can like grab a lot of things about their specific connection which was just made. And here you can see, first of all, we have a user connected to the server. Then we have our entire socket object, and inside this object we have a ID, we have the server, we have a lot of information right here, which is something which we're not going to be taking care of that much. But yeah, let me just restart my server once again, and I'm going to be using the npm start. But now let me just comment this line out, save my file, and now let me just hit enter right here. So it's going to just restart my server. Let's just refresh there. So it's going to just give us that server connected first and also second time. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are going to be connecting to the server. But now let's talk about how we are going to be disconnecting from the server. Or you know, let me just also show you the front end. So this is how we are going to be connecting to our socket by using our front end, by using the back end or the server. But now let's talk about how we are going to be connecting to our socket by using the front end in this case. And here you can see we are now currently working with our HTML files. So now let's just do that. The first thing which I want to do is that the syntax will be totally the same. So in this case, we are just writing the IO, but in this case we are just creating the instance of this IO right here, and we are storing that inside this socket. So now let me just copy that and place it right here. And if I just write a dot, and here you can see we have a IO once again, but we are not interested in that. But if I just write the on method, then we have to pass our connection. But in this case, we are not going to be passing the connection. In this case, we are going to be just passing the connect in this case, not a connection, but just a connect in this case, because currently we are working with the front end or the client, whatever you want to call them. Now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to provide a comma, and then we have to just write our callback function right here. So in this case, I'm going to be just passing the console.log of like connected to client right here in this case. And yeah, client would be fine. Or you know, let me just pass that right here, client, and check this. So now let me just save them, and now let me just refresh them. And here you can see we are now getting the user connected to the server twice. You know, let me just restart that because I want to show you. Now let me just write my npm start once again. So it is already connected because we are already inside this page right here. But now let me just refresh that. So we are already connected to the server. But now let me just right click on there and open my console right here, and here you can see we are also connected to the client as well. And where is this coming from? This is coming from this code right here. So this is the client side code, and this is the server side code right here. So this is how we are going to be establishing the connection from the server, and this is how we are going to be making a connection from the client. There we go. But now let's talk about the disconnect. We also have a method of disconnect as well. So if you want to make a connection, for that we are going to be using the connection event listener, and then if you want to use the disconnect, so for that we are going to be using the socket.on. And now in this case we are referencing to this socket right here. We are not referencing to this IO because this IO is the entire socket server, and this is a specific client which we are disconnecting right here. You know, let me just show you that. That's a bit awful and sounds a bit awful, but not that much. So now let me just close that right here. This IO is the entire socket, like the entire WebSocket server right here. We don't want to disconnect the entire socket server, but we just specifically want to remove or disconnect a specific client which is connected to this server. So how in the world we are going to be doing that? We can give it the name of like socket, but in my case I'm going to just give it the name of like client in this case. So now let me just use that right here. So we have a client.on, and now let me just pass the event listener of disconnect. Okay, disconnect, there we go. Okay, and I'm going to be also passing my callback function. So now let me just pass my callback function. So when somebody disconnects from there, so what do we want to show? So we just want to use like console.log of like user disconnected from the server. And now let me just pass the cross or the X button or the X icon right here. So now let me just save that, and here you can see the user is connected to our server, which is totally checked. But now let me just refresh that. So the user disconnect there for 1 second and then reconnects there. But you know what, I'm going to just close that, and now let me just restart there once again. I'm going to be using that, and the user successfully connected right here. But now let me just close that, and once I close that, so what are we getting? User disconnect from the server, and we are now getting the cross icon right here, which is supremely awesome. But if you want to connect a specific user once again, so how in the world we are going to be doing that? We are going to be just using like localhost of 3000 once again, and the user connected to the server. We are not disconnecting our entire server once again. Let me just say that once again. We are not disconnecting the entire server. We are disconnecting just a specific client from the server. So our server is still connected, but we are just disconnecting a specific user from our server. There we go. There was a lot of enthusiasm there. But this is how we are going to be connecting a specific user, and this is how we are going to be disconnecting a specific user on the server side. But now let's learn about the client side. So on the client side, we are not going to be using like socket.on and then the disconnect or something like that. We are going to be closing that, and outside from this socket we are going to be creating yet another socket instance right here. So for that we are going to be just using like socket.on, and when somebody disconnects, so what do you want to do in that case? We are going to be just passing our arrow function, and we are going to be just saying like console.log of disconnected from server in this case, and I'm going to be also passing my cross icon once again. And yeah, now let me just save them, but this will not work because this is the client side and it will not work. So for that we are going to also have to use there we go. So for that we are going to be just using like set timeout, and now let me just pass my arrow function to there, and I'm going to be also passing like 5 seconds right here. And now let me just pass my socket.disconnect method. We have a disconnect method on the front end right here. So what are we doing? Let me just explain that. First of all, we are creating an instance of our socket. When somebody connects to our server, so what do you want to show to the user? We just want to show in the console, we are showing that connected to the client and the check mark icon. Then after 5 seconds, our user will be disconnect from the front end or the client side. Then we are going to be also providing this disconnect from the server. That's because we are currently listening to the disconnect method or event, whatever you want to call that. So now let me just save that, and once I save that, we are not going to be working with a terminal. Now let me just use my npm start right here. It's going to just start my server, and now what I want to do is that I'm going to also open my console right here. And now let me just refresh there right here. So here you can see connected to the client, and after 5 seconds we are going to be getting disconnected from the server. Not the server, from the client. There we go. So now let me just save that and refresh that. So it's going to give us that connected to the client checked, and after 5 seconds it's going to give us that disconnected from the client cross. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are going to be establishing the connection on the server side, and this is how we are going to be doing there on the client side. Alright, so now let's talk about one of my favorite topic of this course, which is called emitting events. So what do I mean by that? Emitting events allows us to send data from one side, either the client or the server, to the other. It's the fundamental feature of the real-time communication. So yeah, that's emitting events, but how in the world we are going to be using that? So this is how we are going to be sending our data from the server to the client by using the socket.emit. and here I want you to notice the emit. So here we can pass any name. You can provide banana, you can provide orange, you can provide computer, you can give it any name you like, but in my case I just give it the name of like message, and then we are going to be providing the data which you want to send to the server, right? I mean like which you want to send to the client. So this emit method will allows us to send data from either the server or the client, something which I'm going to be showing you in a few seconds. So this emit method allows us to send our data, in this case from the server to the client. Okay, so how in the world we are going to be doing that? First of all, we are going to be using the socket. Here you can see we are now using the socket, which is also called the client. We are not using the io.on. We are using the socket, that perimeter, which this callback function is taking, and we are now executing this emit method on there, and we are passing the event name of message. You can give it any name you like, and then we are passing the data of welcome to the server. You can pass the callback function, you can pass anything you want right here. Like this is going to be the data which we are going to be sending from either the server or the client to either the server or the client. I know that sounds a bit confusing, but trust me, it's not. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are going to be sending our data from the server side to our client side. But now how in the world we are going to be receiving that? This is how we are going to be receiving that. First of all, we are going to be using the on. So here you can see we are now using the on. What do I mean by that? In this case we are using the emit, and in this case we are using the on. So what's the difference between both of them? This emit method will allow us to send the data, and this on method will allow us to catch or receive that data. Here you can see we are providing that same name which we are passing right here for this event. So here you can also see we are also passing that same name. We are now receiving, we are now getting the data from this message. So what is the data? The data in this case is welcome to the server. We are now storing the inside our message. We are now passing the callback function to them, and we are just logging that data right here. So now let me just write some code, and then you will get to know what I'm talking about. So what I want to do is that I'm going to go ahead and go to my server right here, and now inside there, if I want to send my data, so now let me just write like emit a message event to the client. So if you want to emit the message, so in this case we are going to be using, I just renamed that to client. Let me just write my socket right here. You can either use the socket or you can use the, but in this case the client will be supremely clear. So you know what, I'm going to change this one and also change this one to the client in this case. Okay, like the name doesn't matter, you can give it any name you like, but in my case I'm going to just give it the name of like client. And now I'm going to be using that client, and now if I just write the dot, and here you can see we have a lot of data right here. So in this case I'm going to be just passing the emit method right here, and now I'm going to just execute that. And now in this case you can provide any name, like I mean any name for your event, but in my case I'm going to be using like message. You can provide banana, you can provide the orange, you can provide Hossein, you can provide your name, you can provide anything, but in my case I'm going to be just passing the message right here. And now let me just provide the data. Later we are going to be also learning about the arrow function, but we're not learning about that, so we're not going to be discussing that. So now let me just write like welcome to the server right here. So like this is going to be the data which I'm pushing from the server side to my client side right here. Okay, so now let me just save this file, and now let me just go ahead and go to my client, and now let me just get that data. So what I want to do is that I just want to remove that because I no longer need the disconnection. So now let me just cut that from here, and here you can see this is our entire code right here. And you know what, I'm gonna also just remove these stuff from here, and let me just make that as a one-liner. I'm gonna also make this one as a one-liner like so. So now let me just save that. And now underneath there, if you want to get the data, so for that, or you know, let me just remove that from here. So for that we are going to be using that socket, and in this case if you wanted to get the data, so we are going to be using the on method right here. This emit method will allow us to send the data, and this on method will allow us to receive the data. So now in this case, first of all, we have to provide that name, like from which kind of thing we are grabbing that data. We are grabbing our data from this message, so I'm going to also pass this message right here. And now let me just pass my callback function right here. And for the callback function we are going to be using like console.log of message, and I'm going to also provide their message as a parameter. And now let me just save that. So once I save that, and now let me just stop my server and restart that, and let's just wait for it. Server is running, and now let me just refresh that. So connected to the client, and here you can see we are now getting that data like welcome to the server. And where we are getting that data from? We are now getting that data from the server. Oh, what the hell did I just do? Let me just put that right here. I don't know why that happened, but you know what, let me just change that data. I'm gonna just say like server is sending the data to the client. Okay, so now let me just save that, and here you can see if I refresh it, and we are now getting that same data right here. Okay, so this is how we are going to be sending our data or emitting the event, whatever you want to call that, from the server side to the client side right here. We can also do the other way around, so I'm going to just remove that from here, and I'm going to be using like socket.emit in this case, and I'm going to just pass like new message, or you can say like new message with the space. You can also do that. And now let me just pass like this is my new message from the client side or something like that. Now let me just save them, and if you want to listen to that event, now let me just remove both of them from here, and I'm going to be using like in this case my client, so client.on, and now let me just provide that same event name, which is the new message. So I'm going to just copy that from here, and now let me just place that right here, and I'm going to be also using the callback function of a message, and now let me just provide my callback function of that message right here. So now let me just save that, and now let me just restart that. I'm going to be using like npm start, and now let me just wait for that. And now let's just refresh that, and here you can see we are now getting their data. Like this is the message, like this is my new message from the client, or coming from the client, or whatever you want to call that. So yeah, and this is how we are going to be emitting the data or emitting the events or sending and receiving the data in Socket.io. So that was it about for the Socket.io, and now let's just build our first basic chat application. So for that I'm going to just create a folder. I'm going to just give it the name of like chat app. Okay, and now let me just open this folder in my VS Code. So for that I'm going to be just using that same command, and now let me just make that a bit bigger, and there we have it. So the first thing which I want to do is that I want to just use my npm init to initialize my current repository. Then I'm going to be installing the npm I to express.js, and also the socket.io, and also the node.js. So now let me just install that. While it is installing, I'm going to be creating a folder. I'm going to just give it the name of like public, and yeah, I'm going to also create a file given name of like index.js right here. And now inside this file, I'm going to take care of that in a few seconds, but now let me just create an index.html file right here inside this public folder, and I'm going to just write my doc type HTML. And now let me just go ahead and provide the title first of all, and I'm going to just say like simple chat app. We're going to be also linking that, so I'm going to be using like src, and now let me just link that to the socket.io and then the socket.io.js. and now underneath this script I'm going to be providing a bit of CSS styling, but you can copy all of the styling from my GitHub repository, or you can just pause the video and just write the styling by yourself. But it is not that much styling, but yeah, it is a bit of styling. Okay, so now let me just save that. And now inside the body, the first thing which I want to do is that I want to just create a UL with the ID of messages. And now underneath them, we are going to be creating a form. So now let me just create a form with the ID of like form, and I'm not going to be providing any action to that. But now inside this form, I'm going to be creating an input field, and I'm not going to be providing the type, but I am going to be providing the ID of input. And now let me just also provide the autocomplete. Autocomplete, and it's going to be equals to off. Like we are not going to be providing any autocomplete for the user, and let's just provide a button which will just say send. Okay, so that's the basic HTML that we have to do. And now let me just save this file, and yeah, I guess that should do it. And here you can see everything is now totally set up. Now let me just go ahead and go to my package.json file. I'm going to also write a start right here for the script, and I'm going to be using like node.mon index.js. Now let's just save there. Let's just test this out. So npm start, and it's going to just start my server, and everything is looking totally cool. And now underneath this form, I'm going to be creating my script tag. You can also create a separate file, and you can just navigate to the file, and you can do all of that stuff. The first thing I want to do is that I want to just select the DOM elements right here in this case. So I'm going to be first of all selecting my form, and let me just use my document.getElementById. and now let's just select our form, which is this entire form. So we are now selecting that by using this ID. And now the next thing which I want to do is that I want to select my input, and we are going to be selecting that by using getElementById of this input. And here you can see we are now selecting this input by this ID right here. So the first step is totally complete, but now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to also create the instance of socket right here. Okay, so for that we are going to be just using like const, and it's going to be equals to socket and io. And now we successfully created the instance of them. And yeah, I'm going to be attach event listener to the form. Okay, so now let me just do that. So this is going to be the third step, and I'm going to be using like form.add event listener, and we are going to be attaching the submit event on there. And now let me just pass my event object, and now inside there we are going to be just preventing the default behavior, which is just a refresh, and we are going to be also searching for the input.value. If we have some sort of a value, then what do you want to do? The next thing which you have to do is that we have to providing data to, in this case, to the server right here. Okay, so if you want to provide the data to the server, so how in the world we are going to be doing that? By using the sockets. So I'm just asking you a question, and I want you to pause the video and answer that. And here is my answer, which is to use the socket.emit method, and we are going to be providing our event name. So in this case, I'm going to be just providing like chat message, and now let me just provide like input.value, and now underneath that we are going to be just emptying out our input.value. So now let me just save that. So that's there, but now underneath this one, and for the fourth step, we are going to be receiving / getting data from the server. Okay, so how in the world we are going to be doing that? And I want you to once again pause the video and answer me, like how in the world we are going to be receiving the data from the server. And we are going to be still using this one right here, this chat message. So here is my answer, which will be the socket.on. And now let me just paste the chat message right here in this, come on, chat message, and we are going to be listening to this event. And now let me just pass my message inside there as a parameter, and I'm going to be just first of all creating an item by using document.createElement. So create element, and now I want to create my li right here, because in this case we already created our ul right here, and we are going to be rendering our li as a messages right here. So for that we already create our element right here by using this create element. And now let me just use my item.text content, and it's going to be equals to that specific message which we are going to be getting from the server. Okay, so now underneath that we are going to be just using like document.getElement by id, and we are now selecting our messages in this case. So where is this messages? This messages is this ul right here with the id of messages. So that's why we are now using this get element by id, and we are now selecting that. So now let me just use my .append child, and we are going to be appending that item which we just created, and we are now setting that to the message content. So now let me just save that, and that's it about for the HTML side. Now let me just go ahead and go to my index.js file, and here the first thing we would do is that we are going to be importing a lot of packages. So packages, so first of all we would need our express.js. so let's just grab our express. Now let me also grab my http module, so http, and we would also need, let me just import my server, and we would want to get that from the socket.io. and now underneath that let's just create the instance. So create instances and make server right here. So now I'm going to be just creating an instance of app, and now let me just use come on express, and now let's just execute them. And we are going to be also creating our server by using http.createServer, and now let me just pass my app inside there, and underneath that let's just create our io of new server. And now let me just pass my server once again. Underneath that, the third step which you have to do is that we have to serve static files in this case, and we are going to be using like app.use. and now let me just pass my express.static, and now here inside there we are going to be passing this entire public folder, and inside this public folder we only have this index.html file. Okay, so we are going to be just making that as a static. So now let me just write my public right here, and underneath that let's just provide our fifth step, which will be create the connection. Okay, so we are going to be creating our connection in a few seconds, but now let's just take care of the sixth step. And the sixth step is to run the server. Okay, so now let me just take care of these 6 steps. So I'm going to be just using like server.listen, and let me just provide the port of 3000 to them. And now inside there we are going to be just logging to the console like listening listen listening on this port, which is 3000. There we go. Now let me just take care of this create connection. So how in the world we are going to be doing that? We are going to be first of all referencing to the IO. Now let me just use the on, and when somebody connects, so we are going to be first of all establishing the connection. So then we can either pass the client, we can pass anything we want, but in my case I'm going to be passing the socket right here in this case. And now inside there let's just use our console.log of user connected successfully. There we go. Let's just provide our check, and now underneath that we are going to be also taking care of the disconnect. So socket.on, and then when somebody disconnect, so what do you want to do in that case? We are going to be just also using our console.log of user disconnected. state right here, and now let me just pass the X, and now let's just get the data from our index.html file. We are now sending this data, so now let's just get this data. So to get there, for that we are going to be using like socket.on, and now let me just provide my chat message, which we are already providing right here. So chat message, and we are going to be storing that in the message. And now let me just provide my arrow, arrow function, but the callback function, and we are going to be also sending that data once again to that client. So let's just provide our chat message, and now let me just provide that message right here. So we are already getting that data, whichever data the user provide for this input value. We are now passing that, we are sending that data to the server, and we are sending that back to the client once again. And here you can see we are now getting that data, and we are now just not logging, but we are now appending that data as an item to the DOM. So now let me just save both of these files, and the moment of truth. Let me just use my npm start in this case, and it's gonna just start my server, but import express from express.js is not defined. Oh, that's because oh god, oh my god, what the hell am I doing? Let me just also provide my type of module in this case once again. So now let's just save that, and let me just restart there once again. Okay, so everything is now working totally as expected, and what I want to do is that I just want to try my local host of 3000. Let me just hit enter right here, and here you can see that's because I just reconnected. So now let me just restart there once again. So now user connected successfully, which is totally awesome. So now what I want to do is that I want to make them side by side. So now let me just I cannot even put this side by side. Let me just put one right here. I'm gonna copy that, and I just open my Google Chrome right here, and I'm gonna just put that right here in this side, but I'm working with a double screen. That's why you cannot see that. But you know what, let me just paste this link right here, hit enter right here. We are also getting this input field, and now let me just make that smaller a bit. Okay, so let's just make that smaller. It's a lot of pain. And oh my god, let me just make that smaller right here. So currently we are now working with the Google Chrome and also the Opera GX. So now in this case, I'm going to be passing the message like hello Hussein, and now if I send that, and here you can see we are also getting that right here in this screen. So now in this case, let's suppose if I want to send the data of like I'm cool buddy, how are you doing? And now let me just send this data, and we are now also getting that data right here. And now let me just provide something else like nothing cool man, and now let's just send this data. So yeah, that was our basic chat application using HTML, CSS, and our basic Express.js. So now let me just refresh that, and here you can see that data is totally gone. And now let me just refresh that, and that data is also totally gone. So now we can successfully send the data by using, let me just make this one a bit dark, and I'm going to be just sending the data like 1, hit send. Let's just provide 2, 3, and 4 right here. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are going to be building our basic Express.js, basic chat application. So now let me just close both of them, and that was our basic chat application. Welcome to the final part of this course. So in this one, I'm going to be showing you how you can use a socket.io with React.js. Okay, so now what I want to do is that I want to open my terminal right here. Let me just zoom in a bit so you guys can see everything a bit better. And yep, like that. And now the first thing which I want to do is that I am currently inside my desktop, and I want to create a separate folder. So I'm going to just create a separate folder, give a name of like React Chat App. And now let me just go into this React Chat App, and now inside there I'm going to be just creating first of all the server folder, and I'm going to be also just running this command right here, which is npm create react or create read applet. So now let me just hit enter right here, and it's gonna just ask us a few questions, and let's just wait for that. So what is your project name? I'm going to just give it the name of like client, and now let me just hit enter, and I'm going to be selecting my React in this case. And now let's just select our JavaScript, just a basic JavaScript, hit enter right here. Now the next thing which I want to do is that I want to use a ls. So here you can see we have a client folder, and we also have a server folder right here. So client has something but the server does not. So first of all, let me just open my VS Code right here. So it's going to open my VS Code right here. Let's just close that, and I'm I'm going to just zoom in a bit first of all, and here you can see we have this client folder which have something but not a node modules folder, and we just have a server folder which is totally empty. Let me just go to my client folder. So for that I'm going to be using cd and then the client, and now let me just use the npm I to install all of that what do you call it, React.js dependencies and everything like that. And now inside this server, oh, you know what, I can wait for this one, so I'm gonna just fast forward the video right now. And React.js is now successfully installed. Now let me just go outside from this client folder, and I'm going to go into the server folder in this case. So I'm going to be using cd and server. So now I am inside this server folder right here. So the first thing which I want to do is that I want to use the npm init-y. So it's going to just initialize my repository right here. Now in this case I'm going to be installing npm I, first of all the course package, then the express.js, then also the nodemon, and finally we also need the socket.io. So let's just go back, and these are all the packages that we are going to be installing. So now let me just hit enter. So it's going to install all of that packages for me. And I forgot to show you one more thing. We also have to install the socket.io client. Let me just show you that. So socket.io client in this case. Okay, so I'm going to just click on this first link, and it's gonna just brings us to this documentation, but it will take a bit of time. Let's just make it as a dark. And if you want to install the socket.io client, so for that we are going to be just using this command right here, which is npm install socket.io-client, and you can learn more about that, but basically it's gonna just allow us to work with React.js. So yeah, you can just go ahead and read the documentation about that and so on and so forth. So yeah, let me just show you that. I'm gonna just close these. And here you can see all of their packages are now successfully installed. So now the next thing which I want to do, let me just go outside from there, and now let me just go inside the client folder, and I am going to be using this same command right here, which is npm install the socket.io-client. Okay, so now we are going to be installing that in this client folder right here. Okay, so now let me just hit enter. So it's going to also install this socket.io, and yeah, that was supremely fast. Let me just zoom in a bit so you guys can see everything a bit better. And now here you can see we have these dependencies right here. So we just installed this socket.io client inside this client folder, and now inside the server folder, let me just show you that. Inside the server folder we only have this course package, express.js, nodemon, and also a socket.io right here. And I'm going to be also using that start right here. Let's just remove that. And nodemon, I guess I didn't install the nodemon. Yeah, I did. Okay, so now let me just use the index.js. So now let's just save this file, and now we are totally ready to go. So now let me just make a bit of cleanup inside the client folder. So I'm going to say bye to the public, and now let me just remove these assets, also this app.css and then index.css. Now let me just go ahead and remove every single thing from this app component, and now let's just save that. I just write my RAFC, that's because of the extension that I'm using. Let's just remove them, and I'm going to also remove this one and also a strict mode. You can keep that if you wanted to, but in my case I don't need that, so let's just remove that. And now let me just go ahead and use the npm run dev. So it's gonna just run my application on this port. Let's just click on there, and guess what, we are getting the error that we did not remove that index.css. Let's just also remove that server file, and we are now getting the app, baby. We are getting the app. So yeah, that's cool. But now the next thing which you have to do is that we have to go ahead and go to the app component, and here we are going to be writing all of our client-side logic. You can also create a separate component and reuse that if you wanted to, but in my case this is going to be just a basic chat application using React.js and socket.io, so I'm not going to waste your time on that. So the first thing which I want to do is that I want to import the use stat, and I'm going to also import the use effect as well. So I'm going to be using the use effect, and it's going to just import it from the React.js. And now the next thing which you have to do is that we also have to import the IO from where? From the socket.io-client, which we just installed a few seconds ago. Okay, so now let me just create an instance or a connection between our server and the client. So for that we are going to be using like socket, and it's going to be equals to IO, and we are going to be running our server on this port, which will be HTTP. And now let me just provide a local host of, come on, local host of 3000 in this case. Okay, so that's then. Now inside this app component, the first thing which you have to do is that we have to create our stat, and first of all we have to just write a messages, and we are going to be sending or saving all of our messages in this stat, which will be the use stat. And let's just provide an empty array. And now we are going to be also creating one for our input message. So we have a message input. This is going to be for the input field, and set message set message input would be fine like that, and it's going to be equals to just an empty string. So that's then. Now the next thing which you have to do is that we also have to use the use effect, and we are going to be passing our callback function, and for the dependency array we are going to be just providing these messages right here, like all of the messages. So when our component first renders, it's gonna just show us all of the messages, and when it re-renders, I mean like if something changes inside that messages, so it's gonna just re-render the component, and it's gonna also show us all of their messages right here. Okay, so we are going to be just receiving our messages by using the socket.on, and we did not create a backend for that, but let's just assume that we are going to be grabbing our messages from this message event. And now let me just pass my callback function inside them, and now let me just use the set message, and we are now going to be sending that message which we are going to be grabbing from our backend, and we are now going to be sending that to our state right here, which is the messages. So now first of all, let me just pass all of the messages because we don't want to mutate our state directly. First of all, we have to get all of the messages, then we have to just use our message right here, I mean like that new message which we are getting from the backend. Okay, so that's there. Now let me just also provide a return and cleanup function right here. So for the cleanup function we are going to be using like socket.off, and now let me just pass a message right here. Okay, so that's there. Now let me just save this file, and now the next thing which I want to do is that I want to take care of these JSX right here. So let's just remove that, and first of all I'm going to be just writing my h1 right here and simple chat app or something like that, and now underneath that let's just create our input field, and the type will be text, and now let me just provide the value, and the value will be there message input. So this component or this input is now controlled because we are now providing our message input right here. Okay, so that's them. And now let me just also provide the placeholder. So I'm going to just say like type your message baby, and let's just provide 3 dots. And now when somebody change or when somebody types something inside that input field, so for that we are going to be passing this set message input field, set message input, and we are going to be getting that thing that the user is going to be providing in this input field. So we are going to be just using like input.target.value, and now let me just save that, and here you can see this how it looks like. And now underneath there, what do you want to do? We just want to create a button which will just say send, and now let me just create the on click event handler on there and send message. This is going to be the function which we are going to be creating in a few seconds, but now let me just provide the reference of that. Okay, and now underneath there, render all the messages right here. So here we are going to be rendering all of the messages. So now let me just create a section in this case, and now inside this section we are going to be iterating over through all of the messages which we currently have. So we are going to be using the map method inside there. Currently we don't have any messages, but we will very soon. So now let me just pass the message and also the index, and now inside them, what do you want to do? We just want to create a div, and I'm going to be just providing my messages dynamically right here if you have a new message. And for the key we are going to be also passing the index right here. So now let me just save that. Let me just go back, and I guess everything is looking cool, but we have to also take care of this send message. So now let me just copy that, and I guess I explained that very well. Yeah, there's nothing else to explain. So first of all, we are grabbing stuff, then we are just creating a connection between the server and the client, then we are creating a state, then when component first rendered, so it's going to just gives us all of the messages from the backend, and now we are just sending that new message to our existing messages database or whatever you want to call there. And finally we are just creating our JSX right here. So we just have our input field, and we are now providing all of their values to them, and we have a button, so it's going to just allow us to send our data. Finally, we are now iterating over through all of the messages, and we are now just rendering each of their message in the div. Okay, so that's then. Now let me just take care of this send message function right here. So now up above this return, I'm going to be just creating this function right here, and now let me just pass my if we have the message input, and let me also use the trim for the empty spaces. That's not equals to the empty string, so let's just remove one from there. If that's not equals to empty string, that's the not triple equality operator. So first of all, I'm just writing this exclamation mark and then double equal to signs. Okay, so that's there. And now let me just use the socket.emit method, and now let me just provide the messages or not a messages but just a message, because in this case we are working with a one message, a singular message rather. And now let me just pass my message input, and now underneath that let me just clear out my messages input field right here. So now let me just provide an empty string to that. Let me just save that, and we are now totally done with the UI or the front end or the client, whatever you want to call that. And now let's get into the backend right here. So for the backend, I'm going to be creating a file given name of like index.js, and now inside this file the first thing we would do is that we are going to be importing our express.js from the express.js, and I'm going to be also importing the create server. Come on, create server from where? From the node http module. And we are going to be also grabbing our server from where? From the socket.io. Okay, so that's that. And let's just also import our codes, because we are now making the connection between the client and the server. Or let me just also write a comment for myself. So this is going to be the packages, and this is going to be for the configuration. So UNIFI yeah, configurations like that. And now let me just provide first of all my app, and it's going to be just express app. And also let me just create my server by using the create server, and I'm going to be passing my app inside there. And now let me just create my IO from the new server from the socket IO. Let me just pass my server, and we are going to be also passing our codes right here. For the codes, we are going to be first of all providing the origin, like what will be our client link or endpoint, whatever you want to call that. So our client is currently listening on this port right here, which is HTTP, and then localhost of 517 come on 73, there we go. So our client is running on this URL right here, so we have to specify that. And then the next thing which you have to do, that's totally optional, but I'm going to provide it anyways. We can also provide our HTTP method like get, post, and put, and so on. So in this case I guess that get and post will do. Let me just also provide one for the middleware, and we are going to be just using the app.use, and let's just provide our codes middleware inside there. And now underneath that, let's just create our port right here, and our port will be in this case 5000, and I'm going to be just listening to the port which will be a 5000 port. And now let me just provide my console.log, and server is listening on listening on port of this port right here in this case. Okay, so that's then. Now let's just create our socket.io stuff. Okay, so now let's just take care of our socket.io stuff. So now let me just go back, and the first thing which you have to do, let's just write a comment like socket.io stuff or something like that, and run the server right here. I'm going to be first of all creating a connection, so connection. And now what I want to do, I just want to provide a client, or let me just pass the socket right here. And now inside there, let's just provide our console.log. Like, this is totally optional. If you want to provide it, you totally can, but you don't have to. New client connected. When this is disconnect, so I'm going to be using like socket.on disconnect. So when this is disconnect, so we are going to be just passing our callback function, and it will just say like client disconnected. There we go. And now here let's just provide our socket.on, and let's just receive our message right here. So message, and let's just put the console.log right here, and message received, RECEIVED, message received. And which kind of message we are receiving right now? We are now grabbing that message from the client, and now let me just push that once again to the client. So we are going to be using like IO, and then the message right here in this case, and let's just provide our message. So that was the entire flow. Now let me just save this file, and let's just test this out. And this should be PACKIGES. Let's just save this file, and here you can see we have our basic chat app demo. So now let me just type something inside there like something, and hit enter right here, and we are not getting that. Let's just see what's wrong. Oh my god, I guess I'm gonna have to restart my, what the hell am I doing? Yeah, I guess that's looking cool. npm run dev one more time. Let's just refresh that, type something, click on the send button, and we are making some mistake. I don't know which one, but we are making some mistake. Okay, so what are we doing wrong? And I just found out the bug and the bug was, here you can see we are now providing the 3000, and we are now listening to the 5000, because here you can see we are now listening to the 5000. So now let me just restart every single thing. So I'm going to be using npm run dev one more time, refresh there, type something, send there, still not working. I'm gonna just run both of them at once. So I'm going to just use, first of all, I'm gonna go ahead and go to my server in this case, and I'm gonna be using npm start and hit enter right here. So now our server is totally running. Let me just go ahead. Okay, new client connected and message received, and this is the message. And here you can see now it is working. I forgot to just run both of them at once. So here you can see our client is running, and also our client is running in this port, and our server is also running right here. You can also use that concurrently. I already have a video on there to combine both of them at once, but I'm not going to show you that. So yeah, here you can see we have our basic chat application. So I can just make that smaller, and I can open my Google Chrome right here, and I'm gonna copy that from here. Let's just close that. Oh, I forgot to close that one. Let's just reopen there, and I'm gonna hit enter right here, and I'm going to type something inside there like hello Hossein, and let me just click on the send button. So it's gonna give us that hello Hossein right here, and I can type something like what's good, come on, what's goody. And now let me just click on the send button. So it's gonna also show us that message right here. So yeah, this is how we are going to be creating our chat application in React.js, and that was it about the Socket.io. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any requests for any other courses or projects, so feel free to comment there below, and I will be more than happy if you follow me on GitHub. And yeah, thank you so much. I don't have anything else to say, so I'm going to just read all of your comments, and if you have any other course suggestion or project suggestion, feel free to drop them in the comment section. I guess I'm gonna just make a new course on something, so say bye bye for now. And so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I'll catch you in the new course. Bye bye.